Some stars of a popular auction show took a break and never returned to your screens. What really happened to them?
When Storage Wars first premiered on A&E in December 2010, nobody expected a show about buying abandoned storage locker sight unseen to become one of the most talked about reality series on cable television. But that's exactly what happened. A cast of larger-than-life buyers, a husband and wife auctioneer team, and the pure unpredictability of what might be sitting behind a roll-up door turned Storage Wars into a genuine phenomenon. More than 15 years later, the show is still airing, but the faces we first fell in love with have scattered in very different directions. Some are still bidding, some have walked away entirely, and some, tragically, are no longer with us. Today we're taking an honest, fact-checked look at where the original cast of Storage Wars stands right now, separating what's actually true from the rumors that have swirled around the show for over a decade. Let's start with the man who was there from the very beginning. Barry Weiss, known to fans simply as the Collector. Unlike most of his co-stars, Barry never seemed to care that much about turning a profit. He was in it for the thrill of finding something strange and wonderful, whether that meant a box of old military medals, a vintage motorcycle, or some piece of Americana nobody else in the room would have looked at twice. Barry left the show after its 4th season in 2013, and for years afterward, rumors periodically spread online claiming he had died. Those rumors were never true, and they resurfaced again as recently as this year. What actually happened to Barry is far less dramatic, though it did include one genuinely frightening chapter. In April 2019, Barry was seriously injured in a motorcycle accident in Los Angeles, sustaining significant chest and leg trauma that put him in intensive care. He spent a long stretch recovering, but he pulled through, and he eventually returned to Storage Wars for 2 seasons, appearing again in 2023 and 2024. Since then, Barry has stepped back from the spotlight once more. He's now in his mid-70s, a grandfather with 2 adult children, and by most accounts he's living a quiet, comfortable life away from the cameras, occasionally popping up for a public appearance or a friendly stop at a local business, much to the delight of longtime fans who spot him. Then there's Daryl Sheets, the cast member fans knew as the Gambler. Daryl was one of the show's original stars, famous for his all-or-nothing bidding style and his booming, unmistakable voice. He'd walk into an auction, size up a locker in seconds, and either walk away with nothing or drop a small fortune on a hunch. That fearless, go big or go home energy made him one of the most entertaining personalities the show ever had. Daryl's health became a public concern back in 2019, when he suffered what he described as back-to-back heart attacks and needed emergency treatment. He was open about the ordeal with fans, and a year later he celebrated the milestone of surviving a full 12 months afterward, crediting his recovery to the support of his family. For a while, it seemed like Daryl had beaten the odds the same way he'd beaten so many auctions. Unfortunately, this past April, in 2026, the Storage Wars community received devastating news. Daryl Sheets had died at the age of 67. Multiple entertainment outlets confirmed that his death was ruled a suicide, with officials reporting he was found at his home in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, after police responded to a call in the early morning hours of April 22nd. Daryl was survived by his 2 children, Brandon and Tiffany, along with a granddaughter he doted on constantly. In the weeks following his death, his longtime co-star Gunter Nazoda spoke openly about the on-camera rivalry the 2 men had shared over the years, telling fans that despite the competitive tension viewers saw play out during auctions, there had always been real respect between them. Gunter also pointed to something darker that had been affecting Daryl in his final months: online harassment. Several people close to Daryl noted that he had spoken candidly before his death about struggling with depression and about the toll that constant negativity from strangers on social media had taken on him. It was a shocking and deeply sad end for a man fans had watched fight so hard for his physical health just a few years earlier. And it's a sober reminder that the struggles people carry aren't always visible, even when we feel like we know someone from years of watching them on screen. If you or someone you know is struggling with depression or thoughts of suicide, support is available by calling or texting 988 or visiting 988lifeline.org. Going back further, one of the earliest and hardest losses the show ever experienced was Mark Bolo. Mark wasn't a full-time buyer on Storage Wars itself, but he was a well-known auctioneer who ran his own storage facility auctions and appeared in related programming, quickly becoming a recognizable face to the reality TV audience that had fallen in love with the storage hunting world. He had a flashy, high-energy presence and a reputation for turning even a routine auction into a show of its own. Behind that confidence, though, Mark was dealing with serious personal struggles, including a history of legal trouble tied to substance issues. In February 2013, just days after being arrested on drug-related charges, Mark died by suicide. He was only 40 years old. It remains one of the most sobering chapters in the show's history, a reminder that the charisma people bring to a screen doesn't always reflect what's happening in their lives off camera. If you or someone you know is struggling, help is available by calling or texting 988 or by visiting 988lifeline.org. It's also worth setting the record straight on Daryl's son, Brandon Sheets, since misinformation about him has circulated online as well. Brandon appeared alongside his father for years, going by the nickname The Side Bet, and fans loved watching the father-son dynamic play out during auctions, with Brandon often serving as the more cautious voice trying to talk his dad out of an overly risky bid. Brandon left the show around its 9th season, reportedly as part of a broader effort by producers to streamline the cast, and he was open about his frustration with how that departure was handled at the time. Contrary to some claims that have spread online, Brandon did not pass away in the years that followed. He's alive and has built a career as a real estate agent in Arizona, and he remains active on social media. After his father's death in April 2026, Brandon posted an emotional tribute online, writing about how heartbroken he was and pledging to honor his father's legacy, including keeping Daryl's antique store and social media accounts running in his memory. His wife Melissa and fellow cast member Brandy Passanti were among those who publicly offered him support during that difficult time. The show lost another beloved figure in March 2023, when Gunter Nazoda passed away at 67 after a battle with lung cancer. Gunter appeared on Storage Wars alongside his family, and while he wasn't always the loudest personality in the room, he was a steady, well-liked presence among the cast. His son, Gunter Nazoda, who remains an active buyer on the show today, shared the news publicly in an emotional video, explaining that his father had been diagnosed only 6 months earlier and that the cancer had progressed too far for treatment to help. Gunter described his father's passing as peaceful, saying he died in his sleep at home. The tribute struck a chord with longtime viewers, many of whom had watched Gunter and his family navigate the ups and downs of the auction circuit together for years. Not every notable loss connected to Storage Wars happened within the main cast. Mo Prigo, known to fans as the Doc, was a fixture on the Texas spin-off, Storage Wars, Texas, where he frequently partnered with fellow buyer Mary Padian. Mo brought a folksy, good-humored energy to the Texas version of the show, and after his run on the series ended, he continued to be remembered fondly by fans of that spin-off. Mo passed away in 2021 following a 6-year illness. His death didn't make the same national headlines as some of the deaths tied to the flagship series, but for fans who followed Storage Wars, Texas closely, his loss was very real, and it's worth remembering him alongside the rest of the extended Storage Wars family. Now let's talk about who's still very much active and how their lives have changed since those early seasons. Brandy Passanti remains one of the most consistent faces on Storage Wars, having been part of the show since its first season. For years, Brandy was paired both professionally and romantically with fellow buyer Jared Schultz, and their dynamic, part business partnership, part relationship drama, was one of the show's signature storylines. That changed in 2021, when Jared exited the series following a misdemeanor domestic violence arrest connected to an incident involving Brandy. He denied the allegations, and A&E never issued an official statement about why he left the show, but the timing led most fans and outlets to connect the two events. Brandy has continued on as a main cast member since then, still running her resale business and still one of the most recognizable names associated with the franchise. Jared, meanwhile, has moved into a new chapter of his life outside the spotlight of Storage Wars. He's reportedly now in a relationship with Rochelle Beckman, who works at his restaurant, Rush Bar and Grill, and he appears to have shifted his focus toward that business rather than pursuing a return to reality television. Nazoda, who joined the cast back in 2013 alongside his wife Casey, has remained one of the show's steady presences over the years, continuing to buy lockers and build his business long after his father Gunter's passing in 2023. Fans have watched Rene carry forward the family's presence on the show, and his openness about his father's death resonated with viewers who had grown attached to Gunter as part of the extended Storage Wars family. No discussion of the show would be complete without Dan and Laura Dotson, the husband and wife auctioneer team whose rapid-fire calling and constant bickering became one of the most enduring parts of the Storage Wars formula. Dan and Laura aren't buyers themselves. Their job is to run the auctions the cast members bid in, and their chemistry, equal parts business partnership and old married couple banter, has made them fixtures of the show since day one. They remain involved with Storage Wars, and over the years they've become almost as recognizable to fans as the buyers competing for lockers in front of them. Then there's Dave Hester, sometimes called the Mogul, who became known early on as the show's primary antagonist. Dave had a famously difficult relationship with nearly everyone in the cast, clashing especially often with Brandy Passanti and Laura Dotson. His time on the show came to an abrupt end before season 4, after he reportedly threatened to go public with claims that certain elements of the show were staged. Allegations A&E denied. Dave later filed a wrongful termination lawsuit against the show's producers, seeking damages, and after years of legal back and forth, the case was eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. 4 years after his exit, Dave largely stayed out of the Storage Wars spotlight, running his own auction business under the name Dave Hester Auctions and occasionally popping up in unrelated media appearances. But the story didn't end there. In a twist that surprised plenty of longtime fans, Dave eventually returned to the show, rejoining the cast for its more recent seasons, including seasons 16 and 17. His comeback brought back some of the old friction that made him such a polarizing figure in the early years, particularly with Daryl Sheets and Brandon, and it gave the show a jolt of the same tension that defined its earliest and most watched seasons. Rounding out the current lineup are several buyers who've become fixtures in more recent years. Ivy Calvin, known to fans as the King of Palmdale, first showed up as a recurring buyer back in Season 3 before becoming a full-time cast member in Season 5, and he's remained one of the show's most consistent and respected figures ever since. Before Storage Auctions, Ivy had a background in arena football and mixed martial arts, and that competitive instinct carried over directly into his bidding style. He runs a thrift and resale shop called Grandma's Attic in Palmdale, California, which he's operated since well before he ever appeared on television, and he still works alongside his 2 adult sons, Ivy Jr. and Isaiah, both in the shop and occasionally on camera. Kenny Crossley, nicknamed the Wild Card, joined the cast in more recent seasons and quickly became a fan favorite for his humor and larger-than-life personality. Before Storage Auctions became his full-time business, Kenny spent years working as a deputy sheriff in New Orleans, and he's often credited with bringing a completely different kind of energy to the show compared to the veteran buyers who'd been doing this for decades. Mary Padian, who got her start on the Texas spin-off working alongside Mo Prigo, eventually transitioned into the flagship series as well and has remained part of the extended Storage Wars family in the years since. It's also worth pointing out just how much the show itself has grown since that first season back in 2010. Storage Wars is now in its 17th season, with well over 300 episodes in the books, making it one of the longest-running unscripted series on cable television. The format changed too, moving from its original half-hour episode length to a full hour starting in 2025, giving producers more room to follow individual buyers through their auction hauls and their attempts to resell what they find. That kind of longevity is rare for reality television, and it says something about how attached audiences have remained to this particular group of people, even as the specific faces bidding on any given locker have shifted dramatically over the years. Looking at where this leaves the show today, it's clear that Storage Wars has undergone a real transformation since its 2010 debut. The passing of Mark Bolo, Gunter Nazoda, Mo Prigo, and most recently Daryl Sheets represents a genuine, painful loss for a cast that, despite all their on-screen bickering over lockers, functioned like an unusual kind of extended family. At the same time, it's important to push back on the rumor mill that follows the show relentlessly. Weiss is alive and has been the subject of false death claims more than once over the years, Something worth remembering the next time a dramatic headline about a reality star's sudden passing crosses your feed without a credible news source attached to it. Reality television has a strange way of making strangers feel like people we know personally, and that familiarity can make us especially vulnerable to sensational, unverified claims about the people we've spent years watching. What's remained consistent through all of these changes is the appeal of the show itself. The unpredictability of a locker nobody's seen the inside of, the tension of a bidding war between people who know exactly how to push each other's buttons, and the occasional jaw-dropping find that makes the whole gamble worth it. The cast has changed, the losses have been real, and the show's energy has shifted as a result, but Storage Wars endures because it was never really about the lockers in the first place. It was about the people willing to bet real money on the unknown, week after week, for the chance at something extraordinary. So that's where things stand with the original cast of Storage Wars right now, as accurately as the facts allow us to tell it. Some are gone far too soon, some have quietly stepped back from the world that made them famous, and some are still out there right now, sizing up a locker door and getting ready to call out a bid. If you've been watching since Season 1, which of these stories surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and if you'd like more accurate, well-researched updates on the reality TV personalities you grew up watching, stick around, because there's always another story worth getting right.